I'm Sharifa George, Public Relations Coordinator of APUA, and welcome to Necessary Conversations with APUA, where we have topical discussions about matters that affect you, our customers. When you think about new services, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Perhaps application forms, processing times, installation fees. All of this is correct. But a new service goes to the very beginning. It starts with when you're building your home. And today, having a necessary conversation with us are members of the planning department within APUA, Mr. Ingram Gordon and Amara Christian. Welcome to Necessary Conversations. So before we get into the conversation about new services, you were asked to reflect on your time at APUA and pick out a memorable moment on the job that you would like to share. So we'll start with you, Ingram, and then you, Amara.
Oh, my memorable moment would be doing a school tour at St. Mary's School of Excellence. The utility went to speak on career fair. And I spoke of the department, what we do, and so forth. And reflecting back at my childhood, when I did CXC, my classmates were saying they didn't understand the reason why we needed to learn about Pythagoras' theorem and so it wouldn't benefit us. And now to show the kids how those same principles that we scoffed at during my time, I actually use them on a day-to-day basis. I saw the light in their eyes got ignited, and it was one of those days that brought good light to me.
Ingram, I'm one of those people. I can promise you I haven't used Pythagorean theorem yet. So, Amara, what's your story?
Okay, so my story is simple. When it comes time for when we get hit by a hurricane, usually everybody need back the electricity right away. And the joy that we get when we go into the community it's something that you really see the importance of APUA in the country, and it gives us a sense of gratitude, and people really honor the work that we do, and that makes me feel good when I was a linesman before I became an inspector, and that really made all the difference for me when coming to work.
During hurricane season, I find that it's an event because everybody comes out to help. All the past linesmen, all the current ones, just really is an experience.
It is.
So let's start talking about new services. So Ingram, we'll start with you. Could you tell us what exactly does the planning department do?
The planning department is responsible for a few key responsibilities within the utilities. One is, yes, obviously, inspection of domestic electrical services, installations. The next is estimating. We estimate the costs for extensions or additions to the electric grid, APUA's grid, in order to facilitate supply to the customer. We also produce drawings called staking sheets, and the drawings are submitted to the electricity business unit after the customer pays for the extension or the addition to the line. We prepare the drawing to the electricity for them to execute the work. Also, we produce maps and drawings requested by the electricity business unit. For instance, when we have hurricane restoration, we do assessment of the line to make sure to know what is damaged. And those maps is what we produce and collect the data for electricity to know what is out there that needs to be repaired and what manpower they need to throw behind it. And other related drawings, such as if they need equipment to be, like a slab for equipment to be installed, we would do the drawings for that and that sort of stuff.
Okay. Has there ever been a case where somebody outside of APUA needed drawings?
Yes. So, for instance, the road works that we're presently doing, the company doing the road work, or would it be Public Works, would request of us to provide us a drawing of the infrastructure near to the road or on the road, that we can make adjustments or inform the contractor as to what is there, or developers of land, national housing, chapter private developers. They would want to sell their lands with infrastructure, so they would submit to us drawings. We would then look at what the nearest infrastructure is in relation to the land, and give them a cost and a drawing to show this is what we intend to put in, and after they pay, we deliver on the drawing and the work.
Okay. I'm glad you were able to explain that, because the planning department is one of the less public departments in APUA, and it's nice to give some exposure to one of the people behind the scenes. So thank you for that, Ingram. We hear the phrase passing a home. So this is a part of the inspection process. Your home has to be approved before the electricity service is connected. Amara, could you please explain to us what are the requirements to approve a home?
Okay. APUA is what we would say an NEC compliant authority, meaning that we follow strictly the National Electric Code out of America. And that is what we are bound to in terms of the code requirements for electrical installations in homes. And a couple of the requirements for passing a home includes, one, a proper grounding system, properly labeled panels. There should be no exposed wiring, meaning that all wires within the home should be terminated at the point of whether a switch, a lighting receptacle, or even an outlet. And generally, the panels should be labeled, and there should be no electrical hazards in the home when we come to do the inspection.
So you were saying grounding, a proper grounding system. What's that?
Okay, so the grounding system in your house, some persons would realize that there is a wire that comes out of the house and goes out into the ground. The electrician would have had to install an 8-foot copper-cladded rod into the ground and connect a conductor to that said rod. And that basically gives the grounding system for the home. And the grounding system should be one where there is 25 ohms. When measured with the ground resistance tester, the ground should measure at least 25 ohms or below. And that is because now, anytime there is a fault current in the electrical panel in the home, that fault current needs to go somewhere. And via that grounding conductor and that ground rod is where it will be dissipated to the ground. So as long as that grounding conductor and that ground rod measures 25 ohms resistance, that is what will protect the occupants within the home.
Okay. And if a property isn't properly grounded, what happens?
Well, that exposes the occupants of the home to electric shock, and also it could cause fire.
And of course, that will result in death, fatality, terribly detrimental. So we were also mentioning exposed outlets. I believe that's what you said.
Exposed wiring.
Exposed wiring.
Okay, so they are, when building a home, the electrician would install the different wires for the different receptacles, the switches, the outlets, and so forth, and the lighting circuits, the lighting fixtures. These have to be terminated upon inspection, because now, if they're left exposed, it can result in injury to someone that does not know. Simply, it could be injury to the homeowner themselves. So when we go to do the inspection, we do not want there to be any exposed conductors or any exposed receptacle. They should be secured in their boxes and terminated properly so that no one can be exposed to them just by going and touching.
Mm-hmm. So if anybody has a home that does not meet all of these parts of the criteria, what happens?
In simple terms, we fail them. And what we would do, we would give them a failed inspection record as to what needs to be done so that they could make the corrections. Well, pass it on to the electrician so that they could make the corrections so that the next time we come, we could look and see what we failed them for. If somebody else goes there, they could see what they were rejected for and yes, they made the corrections, so then now we'll be in a position to pass the house.
Okay, so even if it's just one thing, you're not willing to compromise at all.
No, we don't compromise safety.
Okay, great. Thank you, Amara. So, Ingram, underground wiring is a big thing these days. We have the Dredge Bay community, we have Fries Hill Road, we're utilizing underground technology. But could you share with us the benefits of this?
Well, let me depart some information first so we have a level playing field for underground. We're talking about the service drop. That is the power incoming to the house, not the underground side going back to the grid from where the power would start from for the customer going into their panel. So we would have, I'd start first with overhead to give some reference. So with the overhead service, customer pays for the connection from the pole to their service mast. Service mast being where the wire from the pole comes to the house. So that is a $200 fee. The wire from that mast going into the meter, and from the meter going to the main panel, it is the customer's cost. For an underground, the customer pays for the connection fee, but they have to pay for the wire from the pole to the meter underground, so it goes into conduit, under the ground, up into the meter, and from the meter going into the panel. That is the cost for the underground. Benefits, what is the main benefit of underground is, especially for traffic, if there's an overhead line, a garbage truck picking up garbage can pull the wire down if it's sagging for whatever reason. Whereas if it's underground, you don't have that sort of damage. That is the main benefit of the underground.
Aside from it being aesthetically pleasing, of
It
course.
is aesthetically pleasing.
And I was also made to understand that in the event of storm, let's say there is a breakage in the line, somewhere along the network maybe, when it comes to restoration, because a majority of your lines are underground, it should make restoration a little easier. Is that really the case?
It has some truth to it. It makes it a bit easier. It is not always necessarily the case, but I would say 9 out of 10 times it makes it a lot easier, since an overhead conductor could be struck by anything, flying galvanized, a piece of whatever. Whereas if it's underground, there's nothing in the air, quote unquote, to hit the line since it is underground.
Okay. I want to go into breaker panels a bit more. For a properly labeled breaker panel, what should it look like?
Okay, a properly labeled breaker panel, one should identify the circuits that each breaker is controlling, and also the labeling on the breaker panel should be, as I said before, clearly visible and readable to anyone that's occupying the home. For heavy machinery, heavy appliances within the home, the breaker panel or the breakers should control, like say for instance your refrigerator, your microwave, your washing machines. Each one of these appliances should be controlled by a separate breaker as to reduce the amount of load going to any circuit it's being controlled by.
Okay, so you actually explicitly have refrigerator here, washing machine here, dryer here, and that's labeled.
Yes,
Okay.
it should be labeled.
So I'm happy you mentioned appliances, because that leads us into my next question. Because the appliances of today are not going to be the appliances of tomorrow. So let's talk about future-proofing your home. What advice would you have for customers who are interested in preparing their homes for what could come in the future?
Okay, I would answer that question this way. The way to future-proof your home is to have your electrical designed properly from the inception of building the home. So where you would, let's say, need a number 6 cable for your main, you could probably use a number 4 or a number 2 cable, which is a much larger cable that would accommodate for any additions made to the home anywhere down the line. It's an added cost, but it's also puts you in a position not to have to go back to look at your installation. So the design of the installation is key to future-proofing your home. And I mean, if you have a properly designed home, I'm not sure that you would need to do anything to future-proof it, because I mean, they're making appliances more energy efficient, where they're using less energy. So chances are, as long as it is designed properly, you shouldn't have any problem going forward in the future.
Okay. Amara, you mentioned the number 6 wire in your explanation there. What is this number 6 wire?
Okay, in electrical terms, wire conductors, and let's use the correct terminology, conductors and not wires.
Okay, conductors.
Yes, conductors. They go by different numbers, and the numbers are according to the size. So the larger the number, the smaller the wire would become, versus the number goes smaller and the conductor will become larger. So a number 6 conductor carries a certain amount of amperage. I think it's about 60-70 amps thereabouts, right? Versus a number 4 or a number 2. A number 2 wire conductor would carry up to 100 amps. And usually it's more expensive, but also it lends to the future proofing of your home, because chances are you would not need to change out that conductor for a larger one above a number 2 conductor. So if you're building a home and you install a number 2 conductor, you would be in a very good position not to revisit changing out that conductor, unless you're going into maybe a hotel or something, or some larger investment or something thereabouts.
You said 100 amps. Could you try and explain to me what that would power? How much is 100 amps?
In electrical terms, 100 amps, and amps basically refers to current, the amount of current flow that passes through that conductor. Mm-hmm. So 100 amps in relative terms, you would be looking at maybe at least 2, 3, up to maybe 4 decent average size homes in Antigua. Average meaning maybe a 3-bedroom, bathroom, stuff like that type of home, versus let's say one of these homes that have swimming pool, jacuzzis, and a lot of the air conditioning units. That 100 amps may only be able to power one of that homes, but an average size home, you'll be looking at about maybe 2, 3 of them, 3 maybe up to 4.
Okay.
To put it into perspective.
Is there anything you'd like to add, Ingram, about future-proofing homes?
Well, it would be more on the side of your conduits. As what Mr. Christian said, that conductor side, the number 6 conductor size, if you put it in the 1.25 inch, 1.5 conduit, if you try to pull in number 2, it might, or it will fit, but according to NEC regulation, it might not be within the requirement. NEC requires you to fill a conduit no more than 40% of its size for heat transfer reasons. So, in terms of future-proofing, if you intend to put air conditioning, not now but in the future, it might make sense to put in a conductor size that can take care of that. It sounds initially expensive in the construction phase, but when you're doing it as an afterthought, to make it look neat, to increase your property value, to strap a conduit onto your property, or to cut the wall to put in the conduit, you find it becomes more expensive. So it makes sense to do it now. Let us take, for instance, your dryer. A dryer is a 40 amp supply. Instead of using a 1/2 inch conduit, you might want to put in a 3/4 or 1 inch. It might seem like overkill, but when it comes time for you to put in the dryer, you already have the capacity in the conduit to do so. And this can also relate to other services besides electricity. If you're looking to put in your internet, your iNet service, it makes sense to run all of your network cables, conduits, one time. And that would all be considered future-proof in my perspective, what I think.
Okay, so based on this discussion, I've grown to appreciate that making a sizable investment in your home is very important. So, in that note, I'm going to close this conversation. So, we have come to the end of Necessary Conversations with APUA, where we were having a necessary conversation with the planning department. And here are some takeaways from this discussion. It's very important to ensure that when you're building your home, you hire or consult a qualified electrician. And also, it's in your best interest to ensure that you don't cut any corners. The cheaper way may work out being the more expensive way at the end of the day. Thank you, Amara, and thank you, Ingram, for joining us in Necessary Conversations with APUA. And thank you, viewers. Join us on Facebook and YouTube for the next episode of Necessary Conversations with APUA. Until then, stay safe and bye-bye.